Hello, everyone. My name is Rowan Shetner, and this summer I've been doing a studentship with all our families. In this presentation, I will take you through a snapshot of my research process. Before we get started with the presentation, there are some learning goals I want to go over. In this presentation, I want to share with you my research process, my findings, and how the findings relate to the real world. When I started the studentship, I wasn't just given a fully fleshed out research topic. I was given this topic. I had to look at something about maternal personality and some aspect of child development. When I was given this topic, I was honestly kind of scared. This was a big and scary topic to be given, and I didn't know where to start. But I decided I would just go ahead with my literature review to get a better sense of the current body of knowledge on this topic. I found many associations between maternal personality and child development, including internalizing behavior, externalizing behavior, temperament, attachment style, and emotions towards family. However, out of these 5 associations, I had to exclude attachment style and emotions towards family because those were not AOF variables. In the remaining 3 associations with maternal personality, I decided to only focus on externalizing behavior because externalizing behavior was most robustly associated with maternal personality. After I decided to focus on externalizing behavior and maternal personality, but after I decided to focus on externalizing behavior and maternal personality, I had to dive in deeper to what externalizing behavior really is. Externalizing behaviors are behavioral problems in which a child acts negatively on the external environment. There are many kinds of externalizing behaviors, and AOF uses 3 subscales of externalizing behaviors, and I decided to focus on all 3. These subscales are hyperactivity, aggression, and conduct problems. Focusing on externalizing behavior in research is extremely important because there are many negative consequences associated with externalizing behavior for children, their future, and those around them. For example, externalizing behavior is associated with an increase in internalizing behavior, such as anxiety and depression, an increase in maladaptive functioning in the early 20s, such as criminal offenses and substance abuse, and an increase in parental stress regarding parenting. It was now time for me to decide which aspects of maternal personality to look at. AOF assesses maternal personality using the 5-factor model. Many studies that look at personality use the 5-factor model. The 5-factor model is an amalgamation of previous personality classification systems and research on personality. There are 5 traits within this model, which are agreeableness, openness to experiences, neuroticism, which is the inverse of emotional stability, conscientiousness, and extroversion. Although the original FFM uses neuroticism, all AOF analyses use the inverse, which is emotional stability. However, due to time constraints, it was not feasible for me to focus on all 5 aspects of maternal personality. I decided to exclusively focus on emotional stability, conscientiousness, and agreeableness. I chose these 3 traits because these 3 traits were most robustly associated with the 3 subscales of externalizing behavior. It was now time for me to dig deeper into the associations and find how each aspect of maternal personality relates to each subscale of externalizing behavior. These were the associations I found from my literature review. I found that emotional stability is negatively associated with child hyperactivity, aggression, and conduct problems. Likewise, I found that maternal conscientiousness is also associated with all three subscales of externalizing behavior. Finally, I found that maternal agreeableness had a positive association with child conduct problems, and mixed results were found for the associations between maternal agreeableness and child hyperactivity and aggression. After I found out all of these associations, it was time for me to look at my gap. I was originally thinking about a gap that had to do something with a clinical versus population sample, as most of the sources I looked at only had a population sample. However, this was unfeasible partially due to the small clinical sample size in the AOF data. In the back of my mind, I was also thinking about gender as a gap, as one of the Calgary Summer Student Workshop series was about the importance of not ignoring gender in research. Kristen also suggested that this should be a gap, and after I looked into more background research to see if this was truly a gap, I found that out of the many, many sources I looked at, none were stratified by gender. Thus, I found my gap. After I realized that that gender would be my gap, it was time for me to look at the differences in externalizing behavior for boys and girls. This was the easiest part of my background research, as differences in externalizing behavior for boys and girls is well documented. I found that boys exhibit more overall hyperactivity than girls, more aggression than girls, and more conduct problem than girls. Since you all work at AOF, you know a lot about the participants in this study, but briefly, I will say that the participants in their studies were from the 8-year follow-up survey, which was collected from 2017 to 2020 and composed of 2,074 mother-child dyads. All the data in my study was collected from exclusively maternal report. In this study, maternal personality was assessed by the 10-item personality inventory, which is a short questionnaire to measure the 5-factor model. It's on a scale from 1 to 7, with 1 not having the trait expressed, with 7 really having the trait expressed. Child externalizing behavior was assessed with the Behavior Assessment System for Children 2nd edition, which rates children as either at risk or of clinical significance for each externalizing behavior. There were 6 possible confounders in the study. I chose these 6 confounders because they were A, shown to be confounders in other studies related to child externalizing behavior, or B, were also found to have their own associations with child externalizing behavior, or C, were also AOF variables. These 6 confounders are parenting style, which was measured through the longitudinal survey of children and youth, maternal ethnicity, household income, maternal age, maternal marital status, and maternal mental health, which was made up of maternal depression, which was assessed through the Center of Epidemiologic Studies Depression Scale, and anxiety, which was measured through the Spielberg State Anxiety Scale. The analysis for this study was done using SPSS. There were 9 binary logistic regression models per gender. The regression models were sequential, having household income, household socio-demographic, and maternal parenting and mental health were added manually in sequential blocks to the model to control for confounders. Here is a summary of my research model. You can see the 3 traits of maternal personality here and how they are associated with the 3 subscales of externalizing behavior while controlling for these 6 confounders. In this study, I had 4 hypotheses. The first 2 was that maternal emotional stability would have negative associations with child hyperactivity, aggression, and conduct problems. Excuse me. The third hypothesis was that maternal agreeableness would have a positive relationship with children's conduct problems and negative association with children's hyperactivity and aggression. Although there were mixed results in the literature review for the associations between maternal agreeableness and child hyperactivity and aggression, I decided to make my hypothesis a negative association because of the associations between parental agreeableness and parenting styles and those associations between children's hyperactivity and aggression. Finally, my fourth hypothesis was that gender differences would be seen for all 3 subscales of externalizing behavior. Analyzing the results of my study was the hardest part of this project. Although I knew what a p-value were and what confidence intervals were, I didn't really know what to do with the long documents of data and how to translate that into my manuscript. However, with lots of support from Kristen and Angela and looking at many other studies, I was slowly but surely able to figure it out. Regarding descriptive statistics, here are the mean scores for the personality traits of the mothers. Here are the percentage of children who are at risk or of clinical significance for the 3 subscales of externalizing behavior. And here are the descriptive statistics for all the confounders. Now, the moment you've all been waiting for. What were the associations that I found between maternal personality and child externalizing behavior? Were my hypotheses supported? Well, partially. Oops, sorry. Regarding maternal agreeableness, I found decreased odds of girls' aggression, but there was no change in odds of boys' aggression, girls' hyperactivity, boys' hyperactivity, girls' conduct problems, or boys' conduct problems. Regarding maternal conscientiousness had an decreased odds of boys' hyperactivity. I have girls' hyperactivity, but no change in odds for girls' aggression. Yes. There was a decrease in odds of girls' aggression and no change of odds of boys' aggression or of girls' conduct problems or boys' conduct problems. Finally, regarding emotional stability was associated with decreased odds of boys' hyperactivity, but associated with no change of odds of girls' hyperactivity, girls' aggression, boys' aggression, girls' conduct problems, or boys' conduct problems. When I found out these results, I was honestly disappointed. I was hoping and expecting for all my hypotheses to be fully supported. However, I've since realized that negative results are still important results and contribute valuably to the body of literature. So now moving on to my discussion. I didn't really know where to start with my discussion. I didn't really know what to talk about, but I decided to look further in the literature for possible explanations for the associations I found and did not find. Regarding the maternal agreeableness associations, I found that maternal agreeableness was associated with decreased odds of girls' aggression. This partially supported the hypothesis. A possible explanation for this finding is because those who are more agreeable are less likely to be aggressive, and parental aggression has direct impacts on child aggression. So, if mothers are more agreeable, they are likely to be less aggressive, and thus their children are also likely to be less aggressive. However, this association was not found with boys. A possible explanation for this is because girls are more likely to have secure attachment with their mothers than boys are. Perhaps because girls are more likely to be securely attached to their mothers, they are more likely to pick up on their mother's aggression or lack thereof than boys. Maternal agreeableness did not have association with children's hyperactivity or chronic problems, which did not support the hypothesis. A possible explanation for this is because of the lack of ethnic diversity in the sample. Less than 20% of the mothers in this sample were non-white or non-Caucasian identifying. Ethnicity plays an important role in agreeableness, and because of the small sample size of those who were non-white or non-Caucasian, true associations may not have been found. Regarding the associations with maternal conscientiousness was associated with decreased odds of girls and boys' hyperactivity. This supports the hypothesis. A possible explanation for this is because more conscientious parents are less likely to have authoritarian parenting styles, and those with authoritarian parenting styles are more likely to have hyperactive children. So, if conscientious mothers were less likely to have authoritarian parenting styles, their children are less likely to be hyperactive. We also found that maternal conscientiousness is associated with decreased odds of girls' aggression. Similarly to the previous association on the previous slide, those who are conscientious are also less likely to be aggressive, and thus their children are also less likely to be aggressive. However, this association was not found in boys. Also may be explained by boys are less likely to be securely attached to their mothers than girls, and maybe will not pick up on their aggression or lack thereof. Maternal conscientiousness also did not have association with children's hyperactivity or conduct problems. Again, a possible explanation for this is because of the lack of ethnic diversity. Ethnicity also plays an important role on people's conscientiousness. Regarding emotional stability was associated with decreased odds of boys' hyperactivity. This partially supports the hypothesis. A possible explanation for this is because more emotionally stable parents are also less likely to have authoritarian parenting styles. And like I said previously, authoritarian parenting styles are more likely to raise kids that are hyperactive. There was no association with girls' hyperactivity, which did not support the hypothesis. A possible explanation for this is because maybe there are different forms of male versus female hyperactivity. And there are well-known differences in how girls versus boys express chronic problems and aggression, but not so much for hyperactivity. Maybe the Basque was assessing a more male form of hyperactivity. This is an area of future research. Maternal emotional stability was also not associated with children's aggression or conduct problems. This does not support the hypothesis. Once more, a possible reason for this is because of the lack of ethnic diversity in the sample. Ethnicity also plays a role with people's emotional stability. This study has some important implications. This study contributes to the body of literature because it involves gender stratification. Gender stratification in research is extremely important because girls and boys differ in many ways for many different reasons. If we ignore these differences in research, we will not find the true associations of many things, because boys and girls are different in so many ways. And this research gives a better picture of the true nature of the associations, because as we see, not every association was the same for boys and girls. This research gives more insight about how maternal personality is associated with child behavior in general, further adding that gender is an important part of child behavior and deserves to be researched more in all aspects of child behavior research. This study has some notable strengths. Firstly, it was a large birth cohort study with over 2,000 participants, with a roughly equal amount of boys and girls. These two facts gives this study adequate statistical power. Additionally, the children in this study were 8 years old. Because children's brains are so malleable, their thoughts and behaviors are more easily adaptable than adults. Thus, it is extremely important to know how maternal personality has associations with child externalizing behavior at this age. But this study also has some limitations. Firstly, there was the lack of ethnic diversity in the sample. As I stated many times, ethnicity plays an important role of the 3 aspects of personality that I examined. Because of the small non-Caucasian or non-white sample size, we may have not gotten the true nature of these associations. Additionally, the 8-year follow-up was exclusively that I used in this study was exclusively maternal report. This means we left out important figures in children's life, like fathers, teachers, and children themselves, which all have different opinions on the exhibition of children's externalizing behaviors. The children in the study were also only boys and girls, leaving out non-binary children. The sample size of non-binary children in this study was much too small to be included to have adequate statistical power. This is an area of future research. Finally, this study was cross-sectional, meaning causality cannot be determined. This last limitation leads us to our next steps. Building off this cross-sectional study, longitudinal studies to assess temporality should be undergone. If causality was determined in future studies, inventions could be made to help decrease children's externalizing behaviors. There have been previous interventions that have been shown to alter people's personality. Future studies that assess temporality could possibly work together with the studies involving interventions to change personality to help mothers change their personality traits in ways that best suit their specific children regarding their gender and the specific externalizing behaviors that they need to be improved. Finally, the only confounder that was significantly associated with all bivariates in the study was ineffective or hostile parenting style. Because parenting style is an extremely important part of is extremely important in the associations with child personality, and because many studies do not look at parenting styles, this is an area of future research. There are some key takeaways for this presentation. You should all know that gender does play a role in the associations between maternal personality and children's externalizing behavior. Gender should not be ignored in research of this type or research of any kind. Future research and those who use it should make note of these findings and include gender stratification in building off this research and independent of this research. This research process was the biggest undertaking I have ever done and was very difficult along the way. There were many times where I felt like I just couldn't do something or just really didn't want to do something. But I knew that by the end of this process, it would be one of the most rewarding experiences I have ever done. And it was. I learned so much about what research really takes. I learned that planning and communication is essential. And I learned that support is absolutely necessary. I wouldn't have been able to complete this project without the help of so many people. So a big, big thank you to Angela, Kristen, Musi, Zara, Sheila, and Suzanne for helping me with this project. Here are the sources that I've cited in this presentation. And here are some organizations that deserve acknowledgement. What questions do you have for me? Or thank you so much for watching my presentation. I hope you learned a lot and enjoyed. What questions do you have for me?